Hello, everyone. We are three Black Pratt photographers. I am Mark Skinner. I'm here with my good friends Kenneth Nelson and Greg Cleghorn. And today we're going to be talking about the case for Tri-X. Now, Ken would be kind enough to put up the first slide. When I talk about the case for Tri-X, I'm not talking about the actual casing. I'm sorry, what was that?
The case or coffin? Okay, go ahead.
There you go. The case for Tri-X. I'm not talking about the actual case that the film is sold in. I'm talking about the idea that we should be shooting film at any point in the 21st century at this point. We talk a lot about what we did when we were in school. We talk a lot about how we used to use black and white film. And I just want to go through a really quick introduction to kind of what that experience is like. Basically, you bought film. It came in that little yellow box. The film that we tended to buy most was Tri-X because it had a lot of latitude. You could expose it at 400, 800, or 200 ASA. Excuse me, ISO. We're in the 21st century. And
it started out as ASA, American Standard,
Yep,
so
the American
fairly recently changed over. So go ahead.
To be international. That's why it's the ISO now. So if you go to the next one, basically you would take your film, you put it in the camera, and you would take a bunch of photographs until you ran out of film. I did not do that. This was a roll of 36, and I have approximately, I think, 20 some odd pictures here. Just a bunch of pictures around the city. And we would get a contact sheet, or we would make a contact sheet. Now, this one I had done by these really cool people over at the Color House in Manhattan, and they really did a great job. What they do is they process your film. I'm not, not affiliated with them in any way, shape, or form, but a lot of places do this now.
What did you do?
It's a place called the Color House on Lafayette Street.
Okay.
So basically, it's a photo lab, and at that photo lab, process your film, and they will scan your negatives for you, and it'll send you a link to the scans, and you can download them. And then when you return, you pick up your film. And I had to pay extra for a contact sheet because most people just take the scans. I wanted a contact sheet because I wanted to kind of give you a sense of what it was like before we had scans so popular. We had to look at our contact sheet. We usually process our film ourselves, and then we would get the contact sheet. If you go to the next slide. All right. Oh, nope. Should be one. Oh, yeah. We'd use grease pencils, right? Sometimes they're called China markers. And because the contact sheet was black and white, usually, you would either use red or white or yellow, and they would indicate something different for each of us. If you go to the next slide.
You're giving me terrible flashbacks, Mark, but go ahead.
I know. Right? But you would kind of, circle or put a square around the frame or a set of frames that were your selects, and then you would find the corresponding negative and either send it to a lab to be printed, or you would put it in a projecting enlarger that you had access to onto a piece of photo paper, much like the same paper the contact sheet was made on, and then you would get a print. Now, if you go to the next photo.
Don't forget the cancer-causing chemical process.
Well, there is a case for that.
Never mind.
The reason why I wanted to do a show called The Case for Tri-X is because what I did was I took an old digital camera that I had, right, and then I took my old film camera, and I photographed approximately the same thing. I didn't put them on a tripod. I just pretty much held them up to my eye, and I took photographs similarly at the same time. I brought them around. I used the light meter, which is also something people don't tend to use a lot now. But I used the light meter, got my laser, and I rated the Tri-X at 320, and it had them pull the processing half a stop at the lab. And this gave you the greatest latitude that you can get, as per, I think it was Ansel Adams said 320 was the best. I don't know what developer they used, but I'm just presuming it was something that was like D76 or Rodinal or HC110 or something like that.
I'm sorry. Anyway, hey, Mark, this is your D7000 image, right? So
right. Now,
okay.
This particular image, thank you, Ken, I appreciate that. If you can go close into that at all, right in the center area where the sunlight and the shadow are, and I selected this this area really well because I wanted to get a range of tones for both the black and white as it was rendered by the camera and as it was rendered by film. In this particular case, this particular image.
Where did you, what happened to the old adage about exposed for the shadows, burn in the highlights?
Well, that's why I rated the.
So you
well,
let
that's
the
what I
film
what
do it
I did with the
instead of
triax.
mirroring for the shadow?
I metered for at 320,
That's
right?
not
So that I
metering,
got
that's rating.
illumination. Well,
Where
what
did
that
you
does
meter?
is that gives you. I use the light meter and I use the what do you call it?
Where?
The
Spot?
incident right there in the area. And what I did was I metered the scene and I got the appropriate exposure for overexposing 400 film by about a quarter stop, right? 320. So then I pulled the film a little bit, so I had a lot more grays to work with. And so if you take a look at this particular image, if you scroll up a little, Ken, and go right where the sunlight and the shadow meet on the left side of this image, a little bit to the left, there you go. You'll see that there's sort of a banding that goes on. Now, granted, this is an older digital file from a much older APS-C camera, and it's a camera that quite honestly doesn't shoot monochromatically natively. What it does is it shoots color, and then you can select monochrome, and you'll get a preview. And what I found with these digital cameras over the years is that as wonderful as they are definitely made for viewing in a screen. They're contrasty, and you get lots of rich tones in the blacks, but there are these middle areas, the high quarter tones that I have found. There's a tendency for them to kind of get a little muddy, and they tend to band a little bit in those high quarter tones.
What do you mean by band? Could you explain band?
Well, you see how the light area is one big patch of gray, and then there's sort of like a patch of gray in the middle, like a band in between the shadow.
Is it like a digital band?
Just right here.
It's right there. It's like Matisse's green line. Are you familiar with the painting, The Green Line by Matisse of the woman's face, where she has a green line down the middle to indicate where the light and the shadow are? Well, in this particular photo, you have a gray line because it's a black and white photo. And so I imported it into the camera manufacturer's native, their proprietary processing software, and then just exported it as a JPEG. And you can see that banding is right there. I didn't do anything to it. It's just, that's just as it came out of the camera.
One more thing about banding. Are you talking about that awkward digital difficulty with gradation?
Yes, the difficulty with gradation. Now you're going to tell me that's bit depth also. Okay. Now I know you're going to tell me it's bit depth also. Now if you go to the next photo.
Give me a sec. Let me switch this back out to normal view. Okay, and now we go to the next one. That's the next one. That's it, Mark.
Right. Now, if you go to the next image, what you'll see is if you can kind of zoom in into the same area, you'll see that this scanned triax negative, right, has a lot more dynamic range, latitude. It's much smoother all the way through, right? And that's just kind of the kind of quality that you get from a film negative. And that is why we see today so much information, so much interest in bit depth in digital photography, because most digital cameras still don't have the ability to render all of these gray tones the way black and white film would.
So what is,
and that's all I wanted to say.
8 bit or 16? That's definitely higher bit range.
I'm sorry, it's definitely what?
So it's shot at 8 bit or 16 bit?
That's a scan of a triax negative. So I'm presuming that, I don't know how they scanned it there. I'm presuming it's 14, 16 bit, whatever they're scanning. But what I'll say is that,
you can pop it into Photoshop and change the bit rate depth too.
Well, what I'm getting at is
that gradation completely. It'll be so smooth. It'll be like, wow.
Right, but what I'm getting at is the idea that with a piece of black and white film properly exposed and properly processed, you don't have to pop it into Photoshop to get what would be what you're looking for. Okay, you don't have to put it into anything. You just scan that, and that's kind of what my point is. That there is a case for black and white film still. Not so much color film, because I think the cameras render color very well, particularly the thing, particularly instruments like the Hasselblads and the Leicas, those types of cameras. Some of the other brands do great with color also, but I would say that there is a case for black and white film properly exposed and then scanned, and then letting the scan of that properly exposed black and white negative be your digital image.
Is
And that
that
was really
versus our best black and white dedicated camera today, or
I
the
think,
best black and white camera from 5 or 10 years ago?
well, in all
Good point.
honesty, this is a good point. It's about 10 years ago that I used this particular camera because I kind of wanted to match apples to apples from when black and white and well, excuse me, when film and digital kind of sort of changed places. Now I got a better camera, but it too is not.
Did he answer your question, Ken?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Well, he's in the middle of answering it.
Okay.
Yes.
My apologies.
No, that's all right. No, what I was going to say was that, there are better cameras today, and yes, you can make a conversion. But I think one of the things that we are seeing, if you're kind of paying attention to what manufacturers are doing, the market is sort of demanding a monochrome sensor in cameras. And you'll see at least 2 or 3 manufacturers. I think Leica's doing it. I think who else? There's at least one other company that's creating monochrome cameras, dedicated monochrome cameras. And I think that's because at the end of the day, people recognize that there is a difference between a converted black and white image and a black and white image that was taken natively. And I think you guys know that sometimes you think a little differently when you're photographing in black and white and you're not rather than color. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some images kind of lend or tend to, what is that word? Lend themselves to black and white, and I will shoot that intentionally for that, tonality. But
Hmm.
I don't know. What was your question?
The question was, you guys, when you photograph black and white versus color, do you photograph once again with intention a little bit differently, or do you see a little differently when you're looking for black and white images, or do you just sort of willy-nilly go out and take whatever picture you find and then say, well, this will be a black and white, or I decide when I get back home?
You got anything to say? I got something to say, Ken.
No, go ahead.
Well, like I said, some images just they tend to. Well, you start that by Rolodex. We talked about a bunch of episodes ago, where when I was driving cross country or anywhere out here, it's very rural where I am now, and a lot of barns, a lot of abandoned structures and such, and that Rolodex, where you start thinking about old time photographers, old time, that's not nice at all. Other photographers, historical photographers who make a piece of wood, like a piece of reclaimed wood. There's a big market for that. Tempered, aged wood just pops so beautifully. It's like you just want to, go up and touch it, probably get a handful of splinters, but certain images tend to lean towards a black and white aesthetic. Certain portraitures, some different stuff. But sometimes I will see something and I was like, oh boy, that would look good in black and white, and I'll attack it from that point of view. But I also not goose it, but I do the digital due diligence when I pop it into an editing program to punch the contrast or bring out the shadows or all sorts of stuff. But if I'm thinking consciously about shooting uh, for black and white, I will go in spot meter in the shadow, spot meter in the highlight, and then take like a range
Right,
of
right.
images.
Right. I know you know the process. I was just wondering if in your current process, do you do that? Not would you do that, but do you do that?
Do I shoot it differently?
Yes. I mean, do you find
Well,
that when
you have to, because a black and white image, if you like you were saying, done right, demands a different, grayscale, than just, that's why I was trying to ask you, did you meter the whole scene or did you spot meter the shadow and the highlight and then,
oh, no, just the whole scene? I mean, I didn't go through a spot meter with every area to do that. No. Basically, I did a lot like we would have done when we were in school, which was you get a good meter reading and you bracket a little bit and you know do your processing.
I was spot metering when I was at school. But
You use the spot meter. Use the spot meter.
no, I mean, I'd use a spot meter if I had it, but I'd use the meter and, like who's that, your best photographic device is your feet. I'd walk up to the shadow and meter in the shadow, and then I'd walk over to the
Right,
highlight
right,
and meter in the highlight. So then I would
right.
know
Well,
where, and
so
where to play with that.
1.5, 2 stop. I get it.
Or
What
come
about
back at
you,
a
Ken?
different time of day, you know, because if the sun's not working with me, I don't know who said I hate the sun, but if the sun's not working with you, you study the image. If it's an outdoor shot like that and it's not going anywhere, just come back at a different time of day, or go on a cloudy day when the range is more compressed or whatever. Depends on how you want to do it. But so short answer is I wrote that dissertation. Yes, I do.
What about you, Ken?
I'll answer it by showing my images on the screen and going through my steps. Okay.
Woo-hoo.
All right.
Are you
So
next or?
yeah, I'm next.
Yes.
So
Nice.
I think the case for, as I understood it, the case for Trix was to me more aesthetics than technical. And so one of the things that, first of all these photographs that I'm about to show you are average metering, and that means that it's center weighted. And I point to the area which I want to have the most importance. If it's the shadow, I'll expose for the shadow or aim it toward the shadow part of the image. If it's the highlight, I'll aim it 3/4 toward the highlight or 3/4 toward the shadow. I won't meter total the highlight and I won't meter total the shadow. That's just the way I work with an average meter.
You mean you don't carry the gray card
And
with you, 11%?
and here's the important part.
18%.
Okay.
This shot is in color. This
See,
film is black and white. Had I had color film, I probably would have shot color film. But I only had black and white. So
I
guess
like
what?
it.
I used black and white film. Guess what? The image is pretty damn good. Guess what? I don't give a damn about color black and white. Just give me an image.
Give me
And
an
give me an
image.
image and let the image talk. All
There
right.
you
So
go.
in that particular instance, but I understand that there's a certain love relationship lately with the black and white aesthetic. And I think the black and white aesthetics helps people to see shadow and tone better. But after that, color can be just as well done. So
Yeah.
with that in mind, I'm just going to go through a couple of these images that
Wait. The white. How did you hold that? The white of that snow. That was amazing.
the
Your shoulder.
the white is not really holding. The white is basically paper white.
Okay. Oh,
Well,
never
it's
mind.
blown
Oh,
out. I mean, I would take issue a little bit with how it's blown out because there should be a little bit of tonality, but I think overall the effect is wonderful, particularly since you've got the fog, since it's an ongoing snowstorm.
Mhm.
And I think in color, when all those kids' coats show up in the blues, the greens, and the reds, it's a different photo. I think the monochromatic panoramic that you created, I think, is what's special about this.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah. So I'll just go through these. And again, these are all, and the reason why these are in black and white is because at that time I was basically photographing with black and white film because I had the convenience of processing the film myself. And that was the major factor in using black and white film. Also, right, and you process it yourself. There was no color. You can control it, contrast control when you printed it, and you developed basically on average. As long as you exposed the way you wanted to expose, you basically just developed average, and it turns out fine because if you're going to print, you're going to print using contrast filters. And if you're scanning, you're going to scan using contrast tonality adjustments. Yeah.
Because I was thinking all the digital cameras, they're like grade, somewhere between grade 2.5, between 2.5 and 3.5 out of the camera. And then the black and white films are pretty much grade 2 and sometimes grade 1.5.
Okay, you gotta break that down because the folks that who may not know what 2.5 or 3.5 is.
Well, they had the contrast range in the Ilford multigrade, and then polycontrast filters for Kodak. And when you put the the negative in the enlarger, in the carrier in the enlarger, you would specify how much magenta would be applied to the light to create contrast on your final print. So that was
on the paper too.
Right. So, but
So
the paper
it would vary. The contrast filter would vary,
right,
depending on the paper that you use.
But for the sake of economy, most of us use some sort of polycontrast multi-grade sort of paper so that you could get grade 5 if you had to do a photogram and just get black, white,
too, right?
like who was it? Was it Maholi Nagi and who's the other one? I'm thinking of the other one. And who else?
I forgot who.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But or grade 2.5 to 3, or maybe it was a grade 3.5 was like Ansel from Basement Fog all the way. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So again, not much else to say about, but just show an interest in tonalities. Does this color speak better in black? Does this image speak better in? Would this image speak better in color?
Better than you right now, yeah.
And you have to be there to figure that out, right? Now, and here's the thing, right? Can you imagine yourself there in this place, and you have and you're an average photographer, average person, and you've got black and white film in your camera, right? And then you say, oh shoot, this would look better in color. What do? You got a color roll of film in your camera. What do? Do you really want to rewind your film of the black and white to put the color in there and then shoot the color? Right? Or would you just go with the black and white and just be done with it?
I mean, depending on the camera you have, you the switch carriers or you switch backs, right? I mean, if you had view camera.
Yeah. Same with this one.
Film.
Same with this. So again, it's all about, to me, it's all about tonalities, black and white. Tonalities. Would these would these tones exist in color? Yes. Would they speak the same way? No, not really. Slightly different. But I have no affinity for either color or black and white in terms of a love level for either one. So yeah, that's what I got.
Okay.
And it's funny because I prefer color photographs too, but I just kind of wanted to get into this a little bit. You have more, Ken?
No, that's it. I opted for more, but I decided to keep it short.
I hear you. I love the snow. I love the kids playing in the snow. Like I said, I like a little bit more tonality in the snow, but otherwise, I think it's really wonderful. I'm sorry. What was that, Greg?
Prospect Park.
I'm sorry.
Central?
Prospect Park.
Oh, Prospect. Oh, yeah.
It's a underrated jewel.
Yeah. So Greg is up
Yeah.
next.
I'm up next. They
I
fenced off
thanks for
the
trying.
fenced off the Pilgrim Cemetery up there in Prospect Park. Just I don't know. That's random.
I think that's
Case.
they're talking about Grave.
Huh?
Talking about Gravesend. It's right down the block.
No. There's a hill in Prospect Park on the west side or the south side of Central Park that was a pilgrims from Mayflower days. A pilgrim cemetery was up there, and years ago it was you could just walk up to the gravestones. I think I have some pictures of it when I was back through my 4x5 gates, and I don't know where they are. But now it's all gated off, and you have to get permission to visit the place. Anyway, not that you want to go to a grace. I thought it was cool. Like Prospect Park had a pilgrim cemetery, Central Park. All right, a case for trucks. Okay. Here's the case right here. This is the case for trial. This is well, there. The one thing I love about Tri-X and what I loved about you know the conversion over to black and white, either whatever process, is being able to pop it up in a bit rate, a bit depth, as Mark calls it. And you can get some of the creamiest, smoothest transition that's buttery, and the gradation is something that a well done black and white, I would take a well done black and white over a similar color image almost any day. I'm not too certain I would use Tri-X, but you can work with it. Here, come back to me. I want to show, this is my case for Tri-X. And actually, I wouldn't, can you hear me, Ken?
Yeah.
Hi. This is my case for Tri-X, and it's actually Pan-X. This is, or Plus X, excuse me. I like Plus X and I like Pan because it was just so slow. You couldn't help but, get a nice smooth. And this is a,
Gotta tell everybody what the ISO of Pan-X was. Why? How slow was it?
it was Pan-X, I think was the 32 or
32 or 25.
32, yeah, and the Plus X was 120, 125 or so. And the grain structure was a lot tighter, and I used to shoot this stuff at speed, but then develop it cold so that the crystals and the grain was even more tightened up and smooth and yummy. But this was my old Pratt. This is actually a survivor from Pratt, and it's still got probably some unexposed triads.
How cold? You say develop it cold. How cold is cold?
Whatever, about 10 to 20 degrees colder than manufacturer wanted you to develop at. And it just tightened up the grain so nicely. And then you get some high quality paper and you print on that. Whew, I wish I had a grant for that. Scholarship was nice, but a grant for paper would have been amazing. Like an Ilford. Who was the better paper? Was it all Ilford or anyway? Kodak made some better papers too. But you put those two babies together, and you got some bomb images just from the tonality, and I love color lilies. Who was that photographer who did like a series of color lily images? My memory's not very good today.
Oh man, yeah.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's what I have to say.
That was Georgia O'Keeffe.
O'Keeffe, Georgia. Oh, I love her work.
She's the painter. Georgia O'Keeffe is the painter.
Still, in my book, she's my favorite photographer.
I think Imogene Cunningham may have done some lilies as well.
Imogene. Okay, cool, very cool. But this is where, for me, this is the case for Tri-X. This is where I put it. This is where I leave it. We're bringing back nightmares. I never want to do darkroom work ever again.
Why is your case significantly different from the case that I showed?
just for fun, just for fun. But you like a case, yes, I will accept your premise that the case for Tri-X is valid and fun, and you can do a lot with Tri-X, but I wouldn't. I'd use the slow stuff.
So
And
Greg,
to
I'm
wrap
sorry.
it up, go ahead. Please.
Greg, what is the significance of that case? Why does that case look different from the case that I showed earlier?
This
Yes, got to tell everybody what that
is a
is.
bulk. This is a 100-foot bulk canister for 100 feet of film.
There you go.
And that means you rolled it yourself into the canister.
Right. I take it out into the dark total black. I'd measure out, 36 exposures or the counter would, I forget how it is.
It's
And,
click stops.
Yeah, click stop. There you go.
You got to count 36 clicks.
Right. And I'd you get the do-it-yourself canisters. You put that in there on a device, and you load or tape the end of the film onto that, tape that together, and then click off how many exposures. If you're just gonna, that was a good thing about it. You could, load it your own. You could do 12 exposure rolls. So you didn't, when you're in college and money's tight, you don't want to load up a 36 roll and you only take 10 images. It starts to add up. But yeah, you get a 100 feet roll and you could, make 12 exposures and make as many as you want, as many canisters as you have. That's what you'd make. Sounds like Tri-X. And the case for Tri-X. Yeah, how clever you
And
are.
that's the money saved by bulk loading, correct? That you just put that money in there and you're shaking it.
One more time.
So that's the money that you save by bulk loading your own film.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's it. Just to wrap up, Kenny, my last picture, Tri-X or the case for Tri-X. Tri-X. Tri-X, is it not? It's not really for kids, but if you want to explore film shooting, have at it. But
But it's
definitely
really funny.
your big depths. Go ahead.
I didn't want to do. I was gonna do it, but I didn't want to do it.
You know you wanted to do it. You wanted to. That's
well, the
all
funny thing is, I just got that when I was preparing for this one. So it only took me 35 years. I went, hey. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well.
So, good case.
Well, Tri-X may be for kids, but I will say that Tri-X is for professional photographers who want to really understand what it was like to photograph in the analog times. That's it.
I highly recommend Pan-X.
And as you can see, I decided to lean in to get a better understanding of what that's like.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. I wanted to get a better understanding.
Anyway, guys, real done? Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for indulging me. We have been, and we continue to be, as Greg likes to say, the three black threads. I am Mark Skinner, Greg Cleghorn, and Kenneth Nelson, and have a good night.